Once again, thank you, McKeon. Isn't it exciting? It's a fireball of research information. He's always keeping us on top of what's going on out there in the world, the research world, and all the ways that things are changing, which is great, great. Okay, so Lyme disease. Raise your hand if you know anybody impacted or affected by Lyme disease. It's huge. So, Michelle McKeon here. Her life has been impacted by Lyme disease. You've got to hear her story because it's pretty amazing. And talking about hyperthermia and using that in conjunction with a few other things, and I'm just sort of not even giving you the broad scope of the struggle she's been in. But you got to hear her story, so I'll bring up to the stage right now Michelle McKeon. Please give her a warm welcome.
Let's see if I can get to your presentation. Okay, so you're all set to
Sounds good. Okay, hi everyone. My name is Michelle McKeon. I'm really excited to be here. I'm going to talk today a little bit about Lyme disease and my experience with it. In 2016, I was bit by a tick. I never saw the tick that bit me. Less than 30% of people actually see the tick that bites them. And then I never have a rash. A lot of times people think that you're going to have that bullseye rash. That's the telltale sign, but I never saw a rash. And even if you do see a rash, sometimes it can look different than the bullseye rash. It doesn't mean that you don't have Lyme disease. But the tick that bit me not only transmitted Lyme disease, it also transmitted a bunch of co-infections. And a lot of times co-infections can be a lot more serious than Lyme disease itself. So it transmitted protozoa rheumatica, Bartonella, Paucivirus, which is one of the more fatal infections, and Mycoplasma pneumonia. I went from being a completely healthy person all my life to my entire life changing and getting debilitatingly ill ever since this tick bite. I was working at Fire Island at the time. It was the summer right after freshman year of college. And I was working at Fire Island. I was like, this is going to be a great summer. I'm right on the beach. And then I got bit, and I had full-blown Lyme encephalitis. So I had severe head pressure, noise, heat, light sensitivity, brain fog. I had trouble swallowing, severe neck pain. I really couldn't move my neck, severe ear pain, imbalance issues, vertigo. It was just a mess. And so I ended up going back home. I saw a bunch of physicians. I live right outside of New York City, and we kept on going to different doctors. We were asking about Lyme disease because Fire Island is kind of known for Lyme disease. And I had gotten tested, and nothing came out positive. So they were kind of just like, I think you have a virus, and you will get better. I went back to college, and I continued to get worse. And I remember I was in the cafeteria one day, and my neck had always been really stiff, but it suddenly started working to the left-hand side, and I didn't have any function over my neck anymore. So for the rest of the semester, when I'd do presentations, I'd have to hold my hair like this so that it would be straight. And I wasn't really getting any answers, still so much head pressure, a lot of brain fog, very bad vertigo. I went home for Christmas break, and we decided that I should stay home for the rest of the year. I saw a lot more doctors, and the tricky thing with Lyme disease is it's known as the great imitator because it will attack whatever is genetically weak in your system. So you can be diagnosed with a lot of different conditions depending on what part it has affected you with. For me, it was neurological, and it created 70% nerve damage in my left inner ear. And then I also developed cervical dystonia, which is a movement disorder. But before that, I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, depression, and then other movement disorders as well. And the funny thing with cervical dystonia is most people get diagnosed with it when they're in their 40s. I was 19-year-old at this time, so it didn't really make sense. We are definitely missing something. Just let me get a drink of water. So we were definitely missing something, and I went to vestibular rehabilitation for my 70% nerve damage in my inner ear. I didn't really see a lot of improvements with that, unfortunately, and then I started getting botulinum injections for my neck, which did end up helping. I was on a bunch of different vitamins and supplements and medication, but I only saw so much improvements, and we still weren't figuring out the root cause of this. I still had an active infection in my system. So I went back to school, and I went through flare-ups during college, but I was able to graduate on time, and then I became a 5th grade teacher. And I loved teaching, but towards the end of the year, I had to take a medical leave because my symptoms progressed so severely. I would be in front of the class and doing very basic math problems, but my brain just wasn't functioning like how it should be. So I did a lot of research. I was online and I came across this woman's article on neurological Lyme disease, and I realized a ton of my symptoms were just like hers. She went to see a Lyme specialist and had specific laboratory testing done in laboratories. So I went to one of the best Lyme specialists on the Northeast Coast, and I finally got my Lyme diagnosis. He tested me at IGeneX, which is a very reputable Lyme laboratory. The other ones that I use for my clients are DNA Connections is great, Galaxy Diagnostics, and Fry Laboratories. So I finally got my positive diagnosis, and this was one of the happiest days of my life. I finally had an answer as to what was making me sick for such a long time. Little did I know what a huge road I was about to get into, and how complicated Lyme disease is. And my friends actually threw me a Lyme disease party. We all wore a Lyme green fire, and we had Lyme flavored drinks and food, and watched the documentary Under Our Skin, which was really helpful in having my friends and family kind of understand some of my symptoms and how misunderstanding Lyme disease is. So I started with a lot of antibiotics. My plan was I'm going to do IV antibiotics for a year, I'm going to get better, and then I'm going to go back to teaching. My body did not respond well to antibiotics. Anytime I got off of antibiotics, I would relapse very, very severely. And I had been taking a ton of vitamins and supplements. I also did a lot of detox because when pathogens die, they expel toxins. Toxins create a lot of inflammation, which can cause some brain damage, and just complicate the situation and add to the symptoms. So I wasn't responding to antibiotics, and my doctor at this time said, I think your best option is hyperthermia treatment. So he said, your best option is hyperthermia treatment. And at this point, I had lost 20 pounds. I was down to 90 pounds. I'd lost half my hair. I couldn't recognize my family. I couldn't recognize myself when I looked in the mirror or my friends. Severe head pressure, vertigo, everything was spinning 24/7. Very severe depression and anxiety, and that was probably the hardest and most frustrating symptom for me. I never experienced depression or anxiety before, and I didn't understand that it was inflammation in my brain, and I kind of thought it was my fault, so I wasn't talking about it, and I was embarrassed about it. And so it went into derealization and depersonalization, which is really common in a co-infection Bartonella. You see a lot of those symptoms come out. And so I really wasn't doing well. I'm in the doctor's office. I'm with my mom and my Uncle John, and my doctor was like, you know what? I think hyperthermia is your best option. And I actually had a panic attack when he told me that because it sounds crazy. And I was like, there must be another option than heating my body up to 105 degrees. And so I went home and I did a lot of research on it. I spoke with a few people that have done hyperthermia treatment before, and it started making sense, and it seemed to be my best option. So the next issue I faced was how I was going to get over to Germany for hyperthermia treatment. I had 70% nerve damage in my left inner ear, so the ENTs did not think I'd be able to fly over. we looked into getting a boat over there, and it would have taken me a month to get over. So we rented a small private plane, and we slowly went up to test how my ear would do, and we slowly went back down. It was uncomfortable, but I could manage it, and that was the best route to go over there. I went to, so right before I left, a bunch of friends and family came over, and we were kind of just all talking to each other and talking about what I was gonna be doing over in Germany and the treatment. But I remember looking at them and knowing that, like, okay, there's my Uncle Mike, there's my mom, but there was no connection, and I didn't have any memories as to who they were in my life before that. So I just remember thinking, like, I'm really, really sick. I know I'm so messed up. I need this treatment to work, and if it doesn't work, like, I have absolutely no quality of life. So I was really hoping hyperthermia treatment would move me in the right direction. I went to the St. George Clinic, and and it is a 2-week protocol. Now they actually have a 3-week protocol. I did about 5 days of detoxing. The less toxic you are, the better you tolerate hyperthermia treatment. And then you receive your first hyperthermia treatment. So hyperthermia lasts about 5 hours long. You're in a twilight sleep, so I wasn't aware of what was going on at the time. They infuse flagyl and Herceptin, so those 2 antibiotics, because when your body's heated up, the antibiotics penetrate the spirochetes a lot more effectively. Also, hyperthermia treatment goes through biofilms, and that is so key, because when you have chronic Lyme disease, biofilms form around the spirochete, and antibiotics can't penetrate through the spirochete, through the biofilms to get to the spirochete. So that was my huge issue with antibiotics in the first place, and now there's this treatment that is going through biofilms. It's making antibiotics more receptive to getting to the spirochete, and it's also boosting your immune system. After the 5 hours, I came out and I was in a room similar to an ICU room, and I was exhausted. It felt like I had just run a marathon. And then the next 5 days, they keep you really busy. I did a ton of detox treatments, because again, when you kill pathogens, they expel toxins, which creates a lot of inflammation. We need to get these toxins out so that I start feeling better. So they did vitamin C infusions, glutathione IVs, chelation therapy, ozone infusions, colonics, enemas, ionic foot baths, infrared saunas. And then I had my second hyperthermia treatment. Usually you're able to go a little bit higher the second time than you're able to go the first time. Then I had a few more days of detox, and then I was able to go home. So I get home, and I only felt a little bit better initially. So I'm 24 at this time, and I'm just thinking, how am I going to live the rest of my life like this? The people that I had spoken with came back feeling so much better. What am I going to do? I'm seeing little changes, and this is the first time ever that I'm actually seeing slight changes, but I still am very sick. And so I spoke to my Lyme specialist, and he was explaining that I still have to do a lot more detox. And so I did a lot of research, and I detoxed every day. I would do an infrared sauna, I did a coffee enema once a week, I did detox baths, and then I also would receive the Patricia Keene protocol. And this was absolutely huge in my recovery. Hyperthermia was amazing in killing so many pathogens, and detoxing was the other key component. The Patricia Keene protocol is 4 different IVs that I received. So it was phenylbutyrate, phosphatidylcholine, leucovorin, and glutathione. And so not only do these IVs detox you, but they also help you repair cell membrane damage, which was crucial because I had so much neurotoxicity in my brain and damage from that. So I'm doing a ton of detox. I'm slowly starting to feel better. I saw little changes every day, and I held on to those changes because over time it became a lot more significant. I also started working with an herbalist, and this herbalist used herbs from the Stephen Muir protocol, which he's a pretty big herbalist in the Lyme world. A lot of herbs can go through biofilms as well, and I wanted to make sure I was killing whatever was left in my system after hyperthermia treatment. There are 300 strains of Borrelia for Lyme, most likely more, and then there's all these co-infections and all their strains. So I don't think hyperthermia kills everything, and I just want to make sure that I'm getting whatever it didn't catch. So I'm doing a lot of detox, I'm doing antimicrobial herbs. About 6 months later, I get tested again. Now, right before I went to Germany, I was tested at 5 laboratories. I came up positive with the co-infection Bartonella and Protozoa rheumatica. The cool thing about Fry Labs is that it gives you a blood smear, and you can actually see how substantial the infection is in your system. So my doctor looked at this and they're like, okay, we're not reaching it. This is when we need to do hyperthermia treatment. 6 months later, now I'm back, I'm doing post-treatment, I get tested again at Fry Labs. They can't find any trace of anything. And that told me, okay, wow, like it really killed a lot of pathogens. At that point, my symptoms were so much better. I had gained back my weight, my hair had grown back, and I was starting to feel like myself again. But I wasn't 100%, and I wouldn't be able to go back to work full time, so I knew I was missing something. I didn't think it was so much of a pathogenic issue, it was more of a detox issue. And that's when I looked into methylation issues, mold issues, and heavy metal issues. With Lyme disease, it, again, is super complicated. There's all these little pieces to the puzzle, and you kind of have to peel off the layers to fully recover. So I looked into methylation issues, and I was dealing with the MTHFR gene and various SNPs, and then I was also came out positive for the HLA-DR gene, which specifically deals with mold mycotoxins. A lot of my clients have these genes too, and we see that when they're coming back from treatment and if they're seeing slower results, it's usually a mold component or a detox component, but they're not able to detox their body as effectively as other people. Came out positive with the HLA-DR gene, and then I got tested for mold mycotoxins. I went to Real-Time Laboratories, which is one of the most reputable labs for mold. I think they test like the top 10 mold mycotoxins, the most toxic ones. And I came out very high in a bunch of toxins. So I tested my apartment. Richard Shoemaker is kind of the pioneer in the mold Lyme world. And so he recommends doing an ERMI test. I had an ERMI test done on my apartment to test for mold. And it came out very high. My apartment is clean, it didn't smell like mold, but it is an older building. And so there was an issue that I just didn't see. I ended up moving apartments and adding to my protocol with a few different toxin binders, still doing a lot of detox, cell membrane repair. And my improvement was substantially faster. And I see this to be, again, a huge issue with so many of my clients where mold is overlooked with Lyme disease. After looking into methylation issues, mold issues, then I looked into heavy metal issues. And before I had gone to Germany, I was tested for heavy metal issues, and I came up really high in mercury and lead. So I tried doing chelation therapy, but it was actually really hard on my system, and I just kept on feeling sicker and sicker. My body couldn't handle it. So we stopped with that, and at this point, I felt like my body was strong enough, and I wanted to try it again. I started doing chelation treatment, and then I saw a biological dentist who helped me with amalgam removal. He had specific tools, and he did it in a way so that I wasn't inhaling the mercury when he removed my amalgams. He put me on chlorella before I did this, and then each time I had an amalgam removed, I would do a vitamin C drip, and then I also did infrared saunas during this time. I responded really well to treatment. I didn't have any issues with it. I was tested again after more chelation treatment, and my levels were back to normal. So at this time, I am I'm doing a lot better. I'm starting to feel like myself again. I moved to Brooklyn. I'm moving forward with my life. I've looked into these other recovery factors, and I decided to go back to school to get my master's in human nutrition. When I was doing that, I decided to continue working with the clinics that I went to in Germany for hyperthermia treatment. I created Lyme and Cancer Services, which is where we help people schedule to the 3 clinics that I work with for hyperthermia treatment. But our whole thing is that if you receive hyperthermia treatment, you want to make sure you do it right. Lyme is super complex. There's all these different layers, and we help with scheduling, and when they come back, then we help with looking into any other recovery factors that they may need to look into. We give everyone an ebook. We have an ebook for Lyme disease and cancer because hyperthermia is very effective for cancer as well. We work with 3 clinics, Sanity, which is in Baja, California, Mexico, St. George Clinic, which is where I went for treatment, and then the Bach Clinic, which is also in Germany. All 3 clinics do extreme whole body hyperthermia treatment. So that is going above 105 degrees as close to 107 as possible. The higher you go, the more pathogens you're going to kill. It's important whenever you look into hyperthermia treatment for Lyme disease, 1, that it goes above 105, 2, it's through infrared heat, and 3, that it's inpatient clinics. There are a lot of clinics that do moderate hyperthermia, which is great for boosting your immune system, but it's not going to kill the pathogens that you need to kill. And so for hyperthermia treatment, again, hyperthermia is great for getting through biofilms for Lyme disease, it's great for boosting your immune system, and it makes it easier for antibiotics to penetrate the spirochetes. For cancer, the immune system can't see cancer cells, so it's not really sure where to fight. When your body's heated up, there are these heat shock proteins that go around the cancer cell. Now your immune system knows where to fight. Also, you're able to use 1/10 the dose of chemotherapy to penetrate the cancer cells and the tumor, so it's a lot more effective, but it's also a lot less toxic. And they do localized hyperthermia, moderate hyperthermia, and extreme whole body for people with cancer. So as you can see, Lyme is really complicated. I went from having absolutely no control over my life. Everything, my whole life was revolved around tick-borne illness, and I was at a place where I didn't know if I'd ever come back. Hyperthermia was a huge contributing factor, and then detoxing was the other big part as well. And sometimes really the devil is in the details, so you need to be very persistent when you're dealing with Lyme disease. But it's important to know that there are really good treatments out there, and there is hope in getting better.
Hang on.
Thank you so much.
You know, and sometimes we think we had a bad day. I mean, I want to just, Michelle, hold it. I just want to honor you. Because you just said so much that you've been through. You never stopped, and there were so many things that you did, and it's still ongoing. So you're a very, very strong person. To look at you, it's like that exercise that Sue did when she said look around, but you don't know what's going on in someone else's life, whether they're depressed or whether they've been through what you've been through. Nobody would look at you and know that you have this very detailed, complicated story. And so I thank you for sharing it with us today. How does it feel to share it? I mean, you're in business now to help others, which once again is a part of this story we're hearing from all these wonderful people like Karen and Sue and Trisha's coming up shortly, and Michelle. I mean, you've taken that challenge. I'm just in awe of you and all of our other speakers. So can we just give her a round of applause again and for sharing that story and for just going through it. Just keep going, just keep going and keep helping people, and you're amazing.